Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we've got a really fascinating macroeconomic puzzle to crack. We're going to break down exactly how a geopolitical crisis unfolding thousands of miles away is directly and very suddenly impacting your local investments right here at home. Okay, let's dive right into this.
It actually all started just a few days ago with a pretty shocking statement. During speeches in Hyderabad and Vadodara, the Prime Minister made a very direct appeal to the country, saying, if possible, do not buy gold. Now, for a country that has this incredibly deep cultural and economic love for the yellow metal, this was a massive shock to the system. And naturally, this sparked a massive wave of confusion. I mean, the immediate question on everyone's mind was simply, why? Why would the government try to stop us from buying gold with our own hard-earned rupees? If we have the money and the RBI prints the currency, what exactly is the problem? Well, to figure out the mystery behind this appeal, we have to look at the immediate policy action that followed.
Section 1. The tax hit on gold. Because the government didn't just ask nicely, they followed up with some major financial moves.
Almost overnight, the government hiked the import duty on gold and silver. Back in early 2024, the finance minister had actually reduced the duty to 6% to encourage normal market behavior. But suddenly, it jumped up to a staggering 15%. This new 15% is made up of a 10% base duty plus a 5% agriculture cess that funds things like fertilizer subsidies. Basically, the government built a giant financial wall, practically blocking gold from easily entering the country.
Now here's where it gets really ironic. Since India doesn't mine its own gold in large quantities, domestic prices completely depend on international markets and local taxes. Globally, the price of gold actually dipped slightly by about 0.66%. But domestically, because of this massive new 15% tax wall, the price of gold in India surged, shooting up by 9,000 rupees, and silver shot up by 22,000 rupees. It's literally an artificial price hike engineered just to discourage you from buying. But why go to such extreme lengths?
Section 2. Dollars, Oil, and Forex. This is where we start to uncover the unseen economic currents causing this whole domestic price paradox.
When we break down what India actually buys from the rest of the world, three things really stand out. India is heavily dependent on other countries for its basic energy needs, importing roughly 90% of its crude oil. Annually, that oil import bill sits at a staggering $175 billion. Then you have electronics, and right at number 3 is gold, costing the country about $75 billion a year. So here's the massive problem. Because of the ongoing crisis in the Middle East, specifically around the Strait of Hormuz, the cost of importing that essential oil is rising drastically. If oil prices jump by 50%, that $175 billion bill absolutely skyrockets. You know, the best way to understand this national dilemma is through a simple household budget analogy. Imagine a father who has 100 rupees saved up for his family. Suddenly, the essential coaching fees for his child's education, which in this case is the nation's crude oil, go up drastically. To afford that absolutely necessary education, he has to tell the family, listen, we can't go on vacation this year, and we definitely have to cut back on buying Diwali jewelry. Oil is that basic need to keep gas cylinders burning and transportation running. Gold? Well, gold is the Diwali jewelry the nation simply cannot afford right now.
So the country's wallet is seriously feeling the pinch right now. The numbers show a really rapid hemorrhage. Back in February, India had a very comfortable $728.4 billion in foreign exchange reserves. But by May, that number had plummeted to $690 billion. That's nearly $38 billion completely wiped out in just a few months. And for a major economy, foreign exchange is your ultimate safety net. To make sure we have enough dollars left to buy that incredibly expensive, essential oil, the government desperately had to stop the outflow of dollars being spent on non-essential gold.
Section 3. Why is gold expensive here? You might still be scratching your head thinking, but I buy gold with rupees. Why on earth does the government care about my rupees?
Okay, the crucial missing puzzle piece here is the petrodollar system. You see, the rest of the world doesn't accept Indian rupees for international trade. Whether we're buying oil from the Middle East or gold from global markets, the sellers demand US dollars. This means every single time you use your rupees to buy imported gold, those rupees have to be converted into US dollars first. And since a full 80% of global trade is done in dollars, the US currency maintains incredible supremacy.
And this whole dynamic traps India in a pretty vicious economic cycle. First, you have all this geopolitical uncertainty in the Middle East. That panic naturally causes global investors to rush toward safe assets, specifically the US dollar and gold. Because everyone suddenly wants dollars, the dollar strengthens. That means the rupee weakens in comparison. pushing the exchange rate up to levels like 95 rupees for a single dollar. This double whammy means we aren't just paying higher prices for international oil and gold, but our currency's literally worth less when we try to buy them.
To put into perspective just how damaging this is, over the last 6 years, the value of India's gold imports is multiplied by 2.5 times, reaching upwards of $72 billion. But here's the crazy catch. The actual volume, the physical amount of gold arriving in the country, hasn't increased at all. Because of a 25% price inflation per kilogram globally, Indians are pouring drastically more money out of the country just to get the exact same or even lesser amounts of physical gold. It's just a massive losing equation for the national economy.
Section 4. Gold ETFs, a new alternative. But the market is incredibly adaptable, and investors very quickly found a workaround to this problem.
This whole situation has built a completely new investment landscape. With physical gold, if you go buy a necklace today, you're hit with jewelers making charges, GST, that massive 15% import duty we talked about, and you're actively draining the country's forex reserves. But on the flip side, with gold ETFs, exchange-traded funds, you carry zero making charges, absolutely no GST, and most importantly, they bypass immediate import duties because they're backed by gold that is already sitting safely right here in domestic bank vaults and RBI reserves.
The moment the Prime Minister made his announcement and those new taxes hit, the smart money instantly shifted. Stocks for companies that exclusively manufacture and sell physical jewelry crashed heavily. But simultaneously, almost overnight, investments in gold ETFs jumped by 6%. Investors quickly realized they could still get that financial exposure to gold without suffering the heavy tax penalties or hurting the nation's dollar supply.
For those looking into this, the barrier to entry is actually surprisingly low. Platforms like Stable Money, for example, show how investors can start a systematic investment plan, or an SIP, with as little as 500 rupees. These ETFs are fully regulated by SEBI, so there's safety there. And since they are backed by gold already circulating in domestic vaults, there's no immediate need for the country to import more of it. Plus, because it's completely digital, you avoid making charges and retail markups entirely. It's just a very streamlined way to stay invested in the asset class.
Section 5. The old fear of black market. Now, we do have to acknowledge that whenever governments build massive tax walls, history teaches us there's pretty much always a dark side.
If you've ever seen classic Bollywood movies, you know all about the gold smuggling trope. And the thing is, it's totally based on reality. Whenever you hike duties this sharply, people are going to try to bypass the system. We saw this exact scenario play out perfectly back in the 2013-2014 timeline. The government aggressively hiked duties to save dollars back then too. The immediate result? Well, in 2014 alone, customs officials seized a staggering 245 crore rupees worth of smuggled gold at airports. So the government is well aware that by protecting their forex reserves today, they are really risking a surge in black market smuggling tomorrow.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've seen how a crisis over in the Middle East threatened India's oil supply, forced a massive tax on physical gold to save the US dollars needed to buy that oil, and ultimately pushed smart investors toward digital alternatives like ETFs. Now remember, all investments carry market risks, so definitely read the documents carefully. But my final question to you is this. Given these global crises and the sudden reality of rising domestic taxes, how are you going to adapt your own investment strategy today? And perhaps more importantly, as geopolitical lines continue to shift, is physical gold finally losing its crown as the ultimate safe haven? Thank you so much for exploring this with me.